So with that, we'll get started. We appreciate everyone joining us tonight, and we're excited to be presenting this seminar on Nevada's new law of supported decision making. I'm Emily Hancock, and this is Hank Cavalera, and we are the Self-Determination Law Project, which we created recently to promote education on this great idea of supported decision making. We feel like there's just a lot of lack of information out there right now on supported decision making, and we're hoping that this seminar will give some insight into how it can be incorporated into your life. This workshop is intended to provide information directly to people who can use supportive decision making, people who may themselves have an intellectual or developmental disability, so that they can be informed, you can be informed, to see if this is a good option for you, a good fit for your life. And we know there are a lot of providers listening tonight also. So if you know of a person who might benefit from this information, tonight's presentation will be recorded and made available on our website, along with information specific to Nevada supported decision-making rules. So we'll be sending out a link that has our website along with this video on the website within the next week or so, and we'll send it out to the website or the email address that you use to register for this seminar. We're hoping to be up and running next week, so we'll send that out as soon as we can. Just a little disclaimer before we begin that everyone's situation, as we all know, is very unique and individual. And our seminar tonight is intended to provide you with really good general information about supported decision making. We are not trying to give legal advice, we're just trying to give you some broad information that we hope will be useful, and we strongly suggest that you consult an attorney if you have, to discuss your particular situation. We've created a series of videos for this project along with Marsha O'Malley, who was our videographer, to help illustrate what supported decision making is and how it works. And a number of young adults in Nevada who have developmental disabilities and their supporters participated in making these videos. The first one is a brief overview that we hope will be a good introduction for you to supported decision making.
Everyone has a right to make decisions about their own life, including you, and everyone needs support to make decisions. Some need more support than others. What support do you need? Some people need help to understand information. Some people need help reading information. Some people need help finding information. Some people need help thinking about new ideas or options. Supported decision making is all about identifying a circle of supporters who will help you. Then you can create a written plan that outlines all the details. A plan that you can share with anyone in your life who needs to know, like your doctor, teachers, or landlords. It's all about surrounding yourself with people who can help you make the best decisions for yourself. Because ultimately, you will make the final choices for your life.
What a great start that was to the seminar. We just love that video. And what exactly is supportive decision making? Supportive decision making is just a tool that allows people with disabilities to retain their decision-making power by choosing supports to help them make decisions. This individual with a disability still makes their own decisions with this tool. And this is called, in Nevada, the least restrictive alternative called supportive decision-making agreement. And Hank is going to tell us about this new law in Nevada.
Thank you, Emily. Supportive decision-making, in my mind, is a very important new law because it leads to self-determination. And I think everybody that's been working in this area across the country would indicate that when a person is self-determined, they're likely to lead a healthier life. They're more likely to be employed. They're more likely to be living independently. And of course, they've maintained their own civil rights, as opposed to what might happen in a full guardianship. So Nevada has this new supportive decision-making law. And the question is, how does it help people? Well, the first issue is, when I started looking at this, I noticed a couple of things. One, it wasn't a complicated law, and it didn't restrict what people did. It's an expansive law, and it's expansive in the sense that it's trying to help people reaffirm their natural rights to make their own decisions. And they can do that with supporters. Now, we're going to talk about 3 prongs of self-determination and what it leads to. So self-determination is a process for decision-making and selecting choices. In the law, it says that a person with a disability should be able to live in a manner in which he or she wishes and is capable of making any decisions, and that person is to have a person-centered assistance to help the person with a disability. So person-centered decisions are planning for the future. So you're making a supportive decision-making, you're making choices, you're working on a person-centered plan with your supporters to plan for the future. And then when you can do that, then you're going to be self-determined. And self-determination means that you're taking action to carry out your plan. So that's the goal for all of us, that we're in a situation where we can make it the best decisions and carry the choices out and get what we want in our life and what we think we need. So I think we will all want to be able to be informed and allowed to participate in the management of our own affairs to the best of our ability, and that's put forth in the law. And the law wants everybody to be a self-advocate. So to the extent that it's possible, we want everybody to be able to make their own choices, and if they need help, they can utilize supportive decision-making. So one of the questions that comes up is, who are the persons that are involved in supportive decision-making? So there's really 3 players. There's the person with a disability, they're the supporters chosen by the person with a disability, and supporters are people that are known and trusted by the person with a disability, and people that have time to help and have an interest and care about that person to make sure that things are done in a timely manner. So there's different ways that a supporter can help you. And the supporter can help you by gathering information, bringing information to where you're living, and you can talk about it. So you help discuss the options and the information that is gathered. And sometimes you have to weigh what's good about the information, what's bad. If you make a decision, what's the good point of the decision, and are there some bad points? So you're going to weigh that out. And finally, you're going to come to your own choice, and then the supporter can help you communicate that choice. So if you go to the doctor and you have talked to your supporter before that, and you start talking with the doctor and you need some help communicating your choice to the doctor, your supporter has the opportunity to do that in a way that reflects your choice, not the supporter's choice, but your choice and your decision. So those are the basic rules about how a supporter works. But there's also some other aspects of working with a supporter, and that is that the supporter can help you identify tools to help you practice decision making. So decision making is a learned skill, and some of us have more experience in doing it than others, and a supporter can help you gather different kinds of instruments to help you practice making a decision, measuring your strengths. Sometimes you might have total confidence in making a decision about paying your rent, buying your food, but you're a little nervous about going to the doctor, and you might think, well, yeah, I want some help there. So one of the things a supporter can do is help you identify tools to measure your strengths and try and identify that and where you might need some help. The third person that's involved in this is the service provider. That could be a doctor, it could be a landlord, it could be your teacher, it could be anybody that's helping you from like a regional center. So anybody that's kind of involved in your life and is providing a service or a benefit to you. And what's nice about the Nevada law is it helps you in the fact that the person that is your service provider that wants to give you a service, they can rely on your decision. And if they rely on your decision and they receive that decision in a manner that's good, given to them in good faith, then they can't be sued because they relied on that choice. So it's encouraging service providers to be part of the process. So now we have all three parties on board. And as Emily said, when we're going to do supportive decision making, the law recognizes that this is the least restrictive manner in which a person can get help in making choices in their life. And the law is a very interesting point of law, and I like it. And what it says is that supportive decision making is now the first option in helping persons with a disability in their decision making. And that means that the most restrictive choice, which is a full guardianship, is now the last option. So it's a complete shift in what we've known prior to this movement towards supportive decision making. And it's a cultural shift, it's a legal shift. Lawyers are learning about it. Judges are becoming more aware of it. And I think you're going to see this in the courts playing out over the next few years. So I think one of the key things here is that Nevada supportive decision-making law, we sent you a complete copy of that, and it's in NRS 162C. It is a recognition that persons with a disability are the best people to make their own choices about their own lives. Now, the fact that a person has a supportive decision-making agreement is important from the standpoint that Nevada law says that if you have a supportive decision-making agreement, that fact cannot be used against you in a later proceeding where a guardianship is sought. So just because you're getting some help now, and somebody later thinks you need a guardianship, they can't say, oh, well, this person had a supportive decision-making agreement and that in fact is bad and therefore they need a guardianship. That can't be done. So supportive decision-making, again, it's a model to support people with disabilities to make and communicate their own decisions about their lives. And always remember that the person with a disability is the decision maker. They're at the center of supportive decision-making. I can't say that enough. There's some limits on supporters. I wouldn't want to necessarily turn all of my rights over to somebody else. So the law has set up some rules. And the rules are that a supporter of yours that is going to help you at the bank, they can't try and exert undue influence on you and say, oh, give me all your money. That would be improper. So they're restricted from doing that. A supporter cannot obtain information without your permission. So they couldn't take the supportive decision agreement, take it into the doctor and say, I want all the information that you have about this person. They can't do that. They can only do it if you agree to that. And the information that they do gather can only be used for a purpose that you authorize. It can't be used for some other purpose. So a supporter is first a caring person, somebody that you trust and you know, and a person that's going to work to get things done timely for you, and they're going to work in a way that gets you the information in a timely manner so you can make your choice. So we kind of call that care. They're going to work with care, they're going to work with diligence, and they're going to work with competence. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the agreement process. So the adult, the person with a disability, enters into an agreement voluntarily and without coercion. Nobody can force you to do an agreement. You can take your time, look at it. You can talk to somebody about it who you think might be a supporter. If you have questions, you just say, well, I want to think about this, and then you might go talk to somebody else about it. You know, what do you think about why I should do this or not do it? Now, the agreement itself has to be in writing. It has to be dated. Now, we sent you 3 flyers about supportive decision making. One is for the person that has that is disabled, the person with a disability. One is for the supporter, and one is for the service provider. There's a little glitch in those forms, and I don't know if it's been corrected yet, but it doesn't say that the document has to be dated. So that the first thing is it has to be in writing, it has to be signed and dated, and then you can designate 1 or more supporters. So you could have 2 people making decisions for you, working together on healthcare decisions. Or you could have them working alternatively. You could say, well, my first decision is going to be my mom, and if my mom can no longer help me, then I want my sister to do it. So you can have people working together at the same time, or you can have people working in a successive framework. One of the things you want to do in your supportive decision making is you want to write out the things that you want help with. If you don't need help in something, you don't have to put it down. If you do need help, then you can do it, and it's in the statute. You can do it over healthcare, where you live, budgeting, financial matters, working with the attorney, education, working with the people that help you, like at a service provider, an agency. If they're working with you and you need some help communicating with them, the supporter can help you do that. Another thing you can do in your agreement is you can write down what you don't want the supporter to do. So if you don't want the supporter to get access to your healthcare records, but you want the supporter to remind you to go to the doctor and help and take notes at the doctor's office, that's fine. But if you say, I don't want you to get copies of my medical records, then they can't do that. You can write that into the agreement. So the key thing here, and this is a little tricky, and I want everybody to pay attention, because you have to sign the agreement, and all your supporters have to sign the agreement, and you all have to sign it at the same time. So if you're in a room and you have 3 supporters, they have to all be there, and you all have to sign it at the same time, and then you have to have 2 adult witnesses sign it. Okay, and the reason why I bring it up is because Nevada doesn't have an approved form at this point. And sometimes you might go to another website. A primary one is the National Center for Supportive Decision Making. They have all kinds of agreements from all over the country in there, but some of those agreements require the document be signed before a notary. That is not what the Nevada law allows. Nevada law says you have to sign it in front of 2 adult witnesses. Now, one of the great things about supportive decision making in Nevada and across the country is it's an ongoing process. You might need help with a couple of things this year, but 3 years from now, you might want some help with something else. And then you're saying, okay, I understand these first 2 things. I don't want you to help me with that anymore, but I want some help with these new things that have entered my life. So the agreement can be changed, and you can change it by just essentially writing another agreement, or you could amend it. If you don't like your supportive decision-making agreement, you can terminate it. And you can terminate it by writing a note and giving it to your supporters and say, I don't want this agreement, it's over. Or you can say that to them verbally. As long as they know you don't want it anymore, then it's over with. On the other side, your supporters can terminate the agreement also. So one of the things you want to do is during the process of having a supportive decision making, if things come up, you want to talk with your supporter, say, how are things going? How do you feel about this? Your supporter can ask you the same thing. They can say, son, how has supportive decision making worked for you? How can I do a better job? Am I bringing you the information? Those kinds of things, because you want to keep a mutually constructive relationship in your agreement. And these agreements can go on for a long time. One of the key things about a supportive decision-making agreement is it can grow with you. So it's not just that your choices can change and the ideas about where you want help with, but your supporters can change. So you could have your mom be a supporter at this point, and let's assume there's a time when your mom can't do it. You could have somebody that's closer to your age be the backup. So the agreement can grow and live with you. One of the last things I'd like to say is that supportive decision making helps you be a better decision maker. And making decision is a learned skill. So you can practice making decisions. You can do role playing. You can get a couple of people in your family. You can talk about, okay, let's practice whether I'm going to go to the dentist. And the dentist says, you have to have some work done on your teeth. And you can talk about that and you can role play. Somebody could be the dentist, somebody could be the supporter, somebody can act as the person with a disability. You can change roles and you can try it out and see how it works for you. And the final note is, always remember that you can change your supportive decision-making agreement and you can update it. Emily?
Sure. Marcia, next. What are supports, Hank?
Oh, this is a big one. Okay. When we're looking at this stuff in the law, people categorize things differently. So if I say something tonight that I think something is a method of providing support, another lawyer might disagree with it and say, well, Hank, you mischaracterized that. So I'm going to give it what I think is my best shot. So supports include methods of making a decision. That can be learning about decision making, role playing, making a chart. You could make a chart and you could say going to the doctor, money management, school, talking to the lawyer. And you could say, I can do this. You can have just write down a column and you could say, I can do this. And if you don't think you can, the next column would be, I need help. And then you can say, you would be working with your decision maker, your supporter, not your decision maker, but working with your supporter, you can try and identify how you need help. And that's just an exercise for you to, as a tool you can use to better your skills. There's types of support that a supporter can provide. And as we talked about before, gathering information, helping you understand the information, helping you understand the consequences and the benefits of different decisions, help communicating your decision to others, and helping that your decision is carried out. I don't think that's always expressed. But one of the things, if you make a decision and you say, I want this, and nobody does anything about it, nobody follows up, it's not going to get done. So one of the things that a supporter can do is make sure that your decision is carried out. In addition to that, a supporter can help you by bringing you to appointments. They can help you by taking notes, discuss options that might come up during that meeting. Supporter could do something very nice. Let's assume you're talking with a service provider and you just need a little bit of time to think about it. So your supporter can just kind of say, gee, can we have a few minutes and go out in the other room and talk about this a little bit? Or I think we need to go home today. Can we have another appointment to come back and talk about it some more? So that's a key thing for a supporter to do, is to help you have the time to make your own choice. And The last one is to identify technology. Now, as Emily would say, is Hank, you just show up and talk, we'll do all the technology, because I'm not very good at it. And but there are certain technologies that can help you enhance your independence. You know, we're using the phone, we're using the computer, different apps that are available, and a supporter can help you identify those things and help you use those to make choices. Okay.
All right, we're gonna have another video here, and you'll meet Jack and Emily. And in Jack's supportive decision-making agreement, his sister Emily is listed as his supporter to help him make decisions about healthcare. And here's their story.
Yeah, it's very hard to just, it's really hard to stand, but my sister can help a few things and don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah, I just make me feel better. I'm probably happy she can help me with my own decision.
And I help you explain things to the doctor too. Like sometimes the doctor doesn't understand what you're saying, and I can help the doctor know what you're talking about too.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome, I have an agreement for you when you look at.
Okay. Exactly what is this?
Emily, can I help you?
Yeah, I can help you. This is to allow me to help Jack make decisions about his health care.
Have you been tired or have you been jittery?
Emily, what's this jubilee?
Jittery means like if you feel like kind of antsy and shaky and a little bit hyper.
Have you been that way?
No,
Okay.
I didn't know that way.
I've been helping Jack his whole life with all sorts of decisions. I'm 10 years older than he is, and so since he was born, I've been helping to be an advocate for him and to help him decide what the best choice would be for his life. Really have to make sure that you aren't doing what you think the best choice for what you think the best choice is for the person that you're supporting. You really need to know and talk to them about what they want and what choice they want to make, and support that even if it's not the choice that you would make personally. Jack does not like to wake up early. He likes to wake up after noon on most days, and a lot of times I think it would be better for him to wake up a little earlier and have a morning and get things done, but in his life that is not an enjoyable experience. So I have to help him plan things for the afternoon or evening so that he can have the mornings the way he likes and enjoy his life the way he wants to, and then he can still do the things but at a later time.
I'll ask your friend, maybe you ask your brother, your other sisters too.
Yeah, it's important to ask someone who knows you, so that they know how to explain what you're saying or what relates to you, and how best to explain things, and who knows your life, and so who could help you make the best decision for yourself.
Yeah, I just like somebody to help and want people want to help someone. People ask your father or your sisters, maybe your friends, maybe your best friend. You can have somebody you want. It's very good to ask.
It's important that people who have a hard time making decisions have somebody who can help them and who can explain things and who can help them make good decisions.
Great, another wonderful video. A lot of people have asked if I'm already using supported decision making. And the answer is probably. Many people who have a disability and people who don't have a disability alike use supported decision making in their everyday life. Supported decision making is just a process where anyone can get help understanding, making, or communicating their own decisions. And you are probably already doing this informally, meaning with with an agreement, without an agreement. You just have people who help you make your decisions. For instance, anytime you discuss an idea or an outcome or a choice with a friend or a family member, that's a form of supportive decision making. And that doesn't have to change just because you create a written formal agreement. All an agreement does is put in writing your wish to have a particular person or people help you make decisions for yourself.
Okay. So one of the things that can happen in life is many times maybe you're having dinner or you're sitting around the house and you're talking about different things that come up, choices you want to make, and the family's discussing those. And it's just like what Emily says, is that is a form of supportive decision making. And the question is, well, why do we need a law? And I think we need a law to make sure that everybody knows that the decision maker is first, that the person with the disability is first. And it lends dignity to the process. And the dignity is to have that piece of paper, to take it to the doctor, and the doctor's given that piece of paper, and the person can say, I'm in charge, and I'm going to make my own choices, and I brought a person to help me, and I just think it formalizes the process. And the key thing again is that that agreement and the law that stands behind it tells the service provider that there's no barrier for them to follow your decision as long as the document was made in good faith. So it's about dignity, it's about encouraging the service provider to act and clarifying for everybody every day that the decision maker is at the center of this process. So with those things in mind, I think the law enhances what we might have been doing informally at home prior to the passage of the statute. So some people will ask, like what are some tools that can be used in supportive decision making? And we talked about those a little bit before, but I want to go over them again because some of them are a little bit different. Using plain language. So, as a lawyer, sometimes we get caught up in the language of the law, and that's not so good. So when we're given a talk like this, to the extent we can, we should try and use everyday language. Supporters should try and use everyday language. Just lost our lights here. Okay. And giving information by visual. You can talk about information, but you can also receive information visually, and you can, so visually, pictures, films, that kind of stuff. Provide extra time to discuss choices. We talked about that. Creating a list of the pros and cons of a decision. Use role-playing activities to assist the person understanding a choice. And bringing a supporter to important meetings to take notes to help the person remember the options. So those are all tools that the supporter can use to assist the person with the disability. And the nice thing about all this is we're putting all the burden and the great idea of decision making, we're putting that into the hands of the person with the disability. So they're going to acquire something, and they're going to acquire the dignity of risk. So they're going to be making decisions for themselves, just like everybody else makes a choice. And it's an enhancing process. So it's something that should be recognized and valued. Now, we're going to get into some things about the law and other kinds of things that have been used in the past besides supportive decision making. So, yes, we're going to use supportive decision making first, but there's other things that have been used in the past.
We're going to watch a video next.
Okay.
Marsha, I think we're ready for the next video to show us how some decisions are pretty simple to make while others are much more difficult. And this kind of gives us some tips on how to make the best decisions for your life.
Have you ever struggled with deciding what to order to eat at a restaurant? You aren't alone. Sometimes simple choices like deciding between a salad or a pizza can be hard because we love them both or we need more information. We make decisions every day. Most are simple, but some are tough, while others are downright life-changing. There's no easy formula for making the right decision, but there are a few simple steps you can take to get there. That's where supported decision-making comes in. Ask for advice, but make your own choice. The first thing to do when you're making a decision is to get really clear on what you want. Do you want to find a new place to live? Or a new job? Pepperoni or cheese?
Good. Have you guys been in?
No.
No? Awesome. What can I get started for you guys?
And I want a spinach with bread, and the toppings I want like everything on it with pepperoni and cheese.
Then you need to gather information about it.
Pepperoni and mild sausage? Yeah, we do have this Mad Dog that's really good. It has pepperoni, mild sausage, ground beef. Is that okay for you?
Yes, I like that.
Get that one going.
But for this one, can I have red bell peppers? Thank you.
With supported decision making, you can ask for help from your supporters. They may know some other information that can help you make a better choice, and they can help you come up with a couple of options to consider.
What's looking good, Jack? There's a lot.
This is a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, pick the best solution and take action.
All right. What decision are you gonna make?
I'm gonna pick Mad Dog.
Remember, you can always change your mind. The choice is up to you.
Okay. Now, one of the things we want to talk about is supportive decision-making and how it might be different from a durable power of attorney. So the first question is, what is a durable power of attorney? A durable power of attorney is a document that becomes effective or remains effective if it's signed now, but it remains effective even if you can no longer communicate your choices to somebody else. So in making a power of attorney, you're delegating decision-making to somebody else. And you may not necessarily be in charge of every choice that person makes, but they do have an obligation, if they're going to do something for you, that they have to do it in a way that is in your best interest. So if you have your brother has power of attorney, and you say, well, go to the bank and get me $40 and use 20 of it to buy some paper for me, and then bring me the other $20 because I want to put it in my room. If the person just gets $20 and buys the paper but doesn't bring the other $20 home for you, maybe the person has done what they think is in your best interest, but it's not what you wanted. They haven't done anything wrong, but they've kind of said, okay, I don't think it's in Hank's best interest that he's walking around with $20 in his pocket or it's in his bedroom. So when you do a power of attorney, you're delegating authority to somebody else, and then somebody else can do something for you. And when they do that, they have to do it in your best interest. They could talk to you and say, what do you want me to do? But they don't necessarily have to follow through with what you want, as long as they're acting in your best interest. That's different from our supportive decision-making agreement, because under supportive decision-making, what do we know? The person with the disability is the person that's in charge, and they make the choices, and the supporting person helps them carry out that choice. So in that instance, if it was difficult for the person to get to the bank, the supporting person goes to the bank, gets the $40. If they're going to follow through with their agreement properly, they've got to go buy the paper for 20 and bring the other 20 home. They can't change that. So you can also provide for a form of decision making into the future, and that's done by what is called a springing power of attorney. So you could have a springing power of attorney which says, I want this power of attorney to go into effect when I can no longer communicate. I can't participate in my supportive decision-making agreement anymore because I can't communicate. If that happens, then it's the same thing. You're kind of picking out a person in advance that you love and trust. You're delegating to them the power to make a decision for you, but they're going to do it in your best interest, not necessarily in accordance with a supportive decision-making agreement. So you can have a supportive decision-making agreement. You could have a springing durable power of attorney for non-medical issues like managing the money, paying the landlord, going to the bank, those kinds of things. And you can have a supportive decision-making agreement, and you can have a power of attorney for healthcare also. Which gets us into our next issue is, I have a healthcare power of attorney for a person with an intellectual developmental disability. Should I have a supportive decision-making agreement? And this takes a little history. So we're going to go back a few years, because I think it was either in 2015 or 2017, some people went to the legislature before supportive decision-making was in effect in Nevada. So they did a nice thing. They tried to do the best they could without a supportive decision-making law. And they got the legislature to adopt what we're now calling this healthcare power of attorney for a person with an intellectual developmental disability. The nice thing about that law is it says if I can no longer communicate my healthcare choices, then I want this person to act as my agent and make healthcare decisions for me in a manner that is either in my best interest or based upon what they know I would have wanted in the circumstance. Now that's not much different than the healthcare power of attorney that I have. But this document also has features of supportive decision-making in it, because it'll talk about, if you read it closely, it'll talk about, oh, if I go to see the doctor, I want my supporter, but they don't use the word supporter, they use the word agent. They say, I want my agent to help me gather information from the doctor and help me make a choice so that I'm actually making the choice, but they're gathering the information for me. So it's the same kind of a concept of supportive decision-making. It was in effect before that the supportive decision-making law was. Now, one of the things that comes up is, okay, what happens if you've already signed a healthcare power of attorney and you've named Josie as your agent, otherwise known as your supporter, but your agent. And that person's going to have the ability to make healthcare choices for you if you can't communicate, and is essentially going to act as a supporter while you can. Now you have a brand new supportive decision-making agreement on a brand new law, and it has a provision in there that says, I want somebody to help me make healthcare decisions. Well, I'm going to suggest that you name Josie to make those healthcare decisions, because if you name your brother Bob and something happens at the doctor's office, the doctor's not going to know who is going to be your supporter or your ultimate decision maker. So that's just it's just something that the law hasn't caught up with these two different statutes. We anticipate they might be corrected in the future, but I think it's something that you just want to be aware of so you don't have any confusion by your family or the doctor.
So Hank talked about how supportive decision.
No.
were different from.
I could swear I put him in there. Look on here. I'll get it. I'll look in case it's on there.
Somebody has their audio on. Thank you. So Hank talked about how a power of attorney is different from supportive decision making. And now another question is, how is it different from guardianship? So you can kind of think of the amount of control an individual keeps is sort of a gradient. So at one end, they have full authority over themselves to make all of their own decisions. And in between that, they have, the ability to give some of that away through a power of attorney, a, healthcare power of attorney, a financial power of attorney. And then at the far other end, you have a full guardianship where the individual has no rights to make decisions for themselves at all. And another person called the guardian has been appointed to make decisions for that person. And that's what Hank called earlier as a substitute decision maker. So it's the full other end of the spectrum because the individual is not making decisions for themselves. And, in a supportive decision making agreement, when you set up the agreement, the individual makes their own decisions. They use some help from a supporter. They're allowed to make good decisions. They're allowed to make bad decisions, but they have that right to make decisions for themselves. Whereas under a guardianship, the guardian is under no obligation to consult the individual on their rights, or they could consult them and then choose to make another decision. So, the trend in Nevada has been to utilize the least restrictive method when possible. And that's why we're, providing all the education about supportive decision making to see what the best option for each individual is. In our next video, we're going to meet Ian and Randall. And Randall is Ian's supported living assistant. He helps Ian make decisions about which recreational activities to take part in.
I would say for me, it's not about trust. It's more like we both respect one's ability to work together. Because I would say what matters most of all is just knowing that he kind of is here to support me, and that's what I like.
I want Ian to develop the goals and the habits and the things in his life that he wants. And so it starts off with asking Ian what's important to him, what's important to you, what you want to do with your life, what your goals for yourself are. And Ian explained to me his priorities, right? He said, I want to be more independent, I want to live on my own in the near future, I want to be better at taking care of my responsibilities, and I want to be healthier.
I would say we do have different tastes in different things.
Sure.
But I would say, he's one of those people that is helping me to achieve my goals for the future.
So it really just starts with like personal interest, priorities, personal goals as, expressed by you, no one else, what you have in mind for yourself, right? What's the most important thing to you about picking a place to go hiking and exercise?
Well, for me, what is interested for me is just knowing how long the place is, because
distance.
That there's some places out there that require like extreme hiking, and I want to be somewhere where it's like short distances and just enjoy the outdoors.
Okay. These are some places that you listed. You want to jump on the computer here and we'll start looking at them?
Yes. When I was looking through all these as well, some of them were kind of like that with like a vivid detail.
Okay, good. The information you want. I'm just here to help Ian explore different routes to get to where he wants to be.
It's one of those things where if you do have goals for the future, And if you have goals that you are passionate about, and doing that, and you're determined to achieve those goals, it's all about trying to simulate your own kind of group or people around you that you trust.
It's about making good choices, recognizing that what we do is not always good for ourselves, and sometimes is bad for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we need to do better for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Ah, all right.
Me? Okay. So one of the questions that's coming up for families and for the courts and for the attorneys across the state is what happens if a person's already in a guardianship? As you know, or should know by now, that every person that has a disability, that has a guardian, also has a court-appointed attorney. So your advocate is your attorney. So whether you do this by talking to your lawyer or you do it with your guardian, and because let's assume you have more of an informal relationship, it's a family member, you can discuss changing the guardianship. You can say to your lawyer, and the lawyer can present it to the judge, that you want to try supportive decision making. And so you could say, okay, we want to try supportive decision making and see how it works. Judge, for a year or 6 months, could you just make my guardianship modified so maybe my guardian can just make healthcare decisions for me for a while, and then I can make all the other decisions, and then maybe after that we can assess that, and then we can see if I can make my own healthcare decisions with a supporter. And that gives everybody the opportunity to look at it. You can determine whether you feel comfortable making your own decisions, and then you can go back to court and you can ask the judge to terminate the guardianship. Or, you could go through the process of developing a supportive decision making and you could practice with it, find out it's working. You could tell the attorney, and the attorney could tell the judge, and maybe the judge would terminate the guardianship right away. And I think most of the judges across the country are sensitive to this, and I think they're going to try and be accommodating and trying to help the person with disability be free of the guardianship if at all possible. So I think there's a lot of work going on in this area. The lawyers are learning all this stuff very fast, and a lot of them know a lot more than Emily and I do, and they're really good advocates. And I think it's going to be a good process as we go forward across the state.
Next, we'd just like to take a really quick moment and ask you to fill out a survey that the Governor's Council on Developmental Disability, who financially supports the project, has asked us to have participants fill out. And you can either scan this code with your camera and just hold it up to the code, or you can press the link in the comment section. So we'll just take a minute and take a pause and let everyone fill this out. Okay, we'll just give just a couple more minutes for everyone. If you could please fill out the survey, would be great. Thank you. In the group chat, Marcia put the link up to the survey. If you can't scan it, just click on the link and it'll take you right on your computer to the survey. I think we'll go ahead and continue, but if you haven't completed the survey, please do so, or if you need to do it at the conclusion of the seminar, the link is still there, and you can fill it out. We really appreciate everyone who can filling it out because it really helps with our funding for from the Governor's Council. So we received quite a few questions before the seminar, and then we have been receiving them in the comment section. So we're going to try to get to the ones that were in the comment section as well as the questions that we received before today. So the first question was, what are the steps to take for a supportive decision-making agreement to become a legal document? The supportive decision-making agreement becomes legal when it's completed by all parties in front of 2 adult witnesses and then communicated. So remember what Hank said before, it needs to be, the individual needs to express who they're choosing as their supporter, and then the individual as well as the supporters need to sign and date the form in front of 2 witnesses. And someone asked in the comments if the witnesses are different from supporters, and yes, the answer to that question is yes. You need to have 2 witnesses who are not either a supporter or the individual who is signing the document. You do not have to hire an attorney to create this agreement for you, but Nevada, as Hank mentioned earlier, Nevada does not have a standardized supportive decision-making agreement template like they do for some other forms. So if you're going to do it yourself, you need to make sure that you meet all of the Nevada requirements for the supportive decision-making form. And we're going to, on our website, we'll have links to templates from around the country that you can use. But like Hank mentioned, some of those forms allow for notary, and Nevada does not allow for notary. You have to use the 2 witnesses. So if you're at all concerned about your situation consulting an attorney is definitely the way to go, because not only can they help you create a supported decision-making agreement that works for you, but if you need other documents, such as Hank touched on before, as bringing power of attorney or something along those lines, they could help you come up with a full plan for what works for you. Someone else asked it, does the document actually, let's see, okay, well, I'm going to answer one other question first, which is, does the document have to be written? Like, why do you need a written agreement if you're already doing it informally? And the answer to that is there's multiple reasons. One is that it's a clear way for the individual to express exactly who they want to be their supporter. It's a way for them to know who their supporters are. It's a way for the supporters to know what their job is and what they're going to help the individual on, what areas the individual wants assistance with. But even more than that, it's a way that the providers can receive that information and know that they have this obligation to honor the wishes of the individual, and as well as the limit in liability that for honoring those wishes that the statute provides for. So it is important to actually formalize the agreement. Not that it needs to be any different than what you're doing informally. You just make the formal agreement reflect the informal agreement. The next question we received was, do you have to register a supported decision-making agreement with the state? No, there's no bank like there is for some other documents in the state. The state does not keep these agreements anywhere. The way that you communicate that you have this is by handing it out to the people that are appropriate. The service providers, the doctors, the schools, anybody who needs it. Let's see, the next question was, if I have a supported decision-making agreement, can my mom or whomever get information from my doctor without being there? And I think that this question was, can you use the supported decision-making agreement to act also as sort of a release of information where a doctor or a school or whomever could talk to your supporter without you being there? And the supported decision-making agreement in and of itself will not do that. It allows the supporter to be there with you and to help communicate with the provider, but does not outright give your supporter the type of power that maybe they would have as your agent under a power of attorney. So if you want the person to have that access to your doctor's records or your school records, the individual can give the supporter that information, but they have to do that in writing. And they could, probably with the help of an attorney, create a supported decision-making agreement that included that information, but it's slightly more complex than just what the templates are. Next question.
Oh, this was a question we got several days ago, and the question really is, can a service provider limit the role of the supporter? And some, like, let's say you went to see an agency or something like that, and they tried to limit the role of your supporter, and you were going to have a meeting, and they said, well, your supporter can't talk in this meeting. Or let's assume they had their own form of supportive decision making and they wanted you to sign their form, and that form says, oh, you can have a supporter, but the supporter can't talk when we meet. That's not proper, because in a supportive decision making agreement, your supporter has the opportunity and the right to help you in communicating your wishes to whoever it is. So that's kind of the relationship. You want to make sure that somebody doesn't try and limit what you can do in a meeting or something like that. The best way to do it is to remember the primary functions of the supporter, which is to gather the information, help you discuss the information, help you weigh the pros and cons of a decision, and then to help you communicate the decision. That's a primary role. And somebody says, oh, the supporter can't do that. Well, that's not proper. It doesn't mean, you don't have to get mad or anything. You just say, well, gee, gosh, I have my own agreement here, and it says the person can do that. And then that's why we have these flyers. We didn't prepare these flyers. They were prepared with a dear friend of ours. And they're on the website for the Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. I've been running around with these in my house as I prepared for this. And I don't think it's a bad idea to run these off. We sent them to you. Initially, if you went to a service provider and they're new to this topic, you can give them this, and it kind of lays out not only their role, but the role of the supporter and the role of the decision maker. So I think they're pretty nice and they're concise and a good way to work. Now, another person asked us, I'm having a struggle between working with providers who are unfamiliar with supportive decision making. What do I do? Well, this is a new law. And one of the ways you can do it is by taking the supportive decision making agreement in, taking this flyer in, be your polite self and, tell them it is a law, and just go from there. My thought is we're all going through an education process. So, you can just keep gently going back and saying, this is what we got to do, this is what we want to do. And if they get, if you get into a kind of butting heads, then you can try and have somebody else come in and help you with that particular person in the office or whatever you're doing. I've got a couple of other questions. One is, how can I help my daughter open up and tell me what she wants? She's a shy girl. And I thought about this a little bit, and I thought, well, one of the things you can do is you can do some role playing, and you can practice making decisions at home. So you could have up a hypothetical about, okay, you're going to rent an apartment. What do you want to look for in an apartment? And do role playing and allow your daughter to practice making a choice. And then if she gets a little bit more confidence about it, maybe she'll be willing to get involved in the communication process and work from there. The other thing you can do is develop these charts that we talked about, where you can make a list of things that your daughter feels like she has strength in, and make a list of a counter list of things she needs some help with, and then you can help her work through some situations that involve those matters. So that's not an easy one, but I think it's a question of growth, and growth kind of comes from confidence boosting and work from there. And now we have a couple of questions. What is the difference between supportive decision making and the complete guardianship? I think Emily covered this. I just think it's a huge difference. Maybe 5 years ago, a group of lawyers in Reno were called in to one of the judge's office, and this topic first came up. And I had a little difficulty, not grasping it, but buying into it. And so I think that happens. And the issue with the complete guardianship is, a person can lose their civil rights. They can lose the right to vote. They can lose the right to marry, to make agreements, make choices just about where they're going to live. Sometimes there's issues about who their friends are going to be. So it can be a very, very restricting, and I think taking away confidence, dignity, just the power of being able to be an independent person. So I think guardianships can be a devastating tool, if you will, and we want to try and avoid it. And we've talked about the strengths of using supportive decision making. One of the other questions is, well, how long do these agreements work? Well, they work as long as the parties agree that they're going to work. So if you have an agreement and you're not getting along with your supporter, or you just don't want it anymore, you can terminate it. You can say, I don't want this agreement anymore. it's terminated, and you can tell the supporter that, or you can write them a note and say that the agreement's terminated. As long as they get that note, that's a valid termination. More likely, you're going to want to keep your agreement going on, and of course, then that means you can amend it and change it. You can name different supporters, different areas you need help, and those kinds of things. Now, the last question is, how are you going to protect a person from making poor choices? You're not. You're not going to protect people from making a poor choice. The only way you're going to do that is in your process of bringing information, discussing the pros and cons of a choice. Some of the national experts in this area would say there's a concept of the dignity of risk that people learn from making choices, and sometimes if it doesn't quite work out, that's something that we can work on. And I think the issue is, most people will say that if a person has a guardianship or they have a supportive decision-making agreement, neither party is more likely to be at risk. So there's no barrier, or there's no problem solving in terms of risk taking by having a guardianship as opposed to having a supportive decision-making agreement.
So I think I've been following some of the questions in the comments. One of them was, what if the individual lacks capacity, I believe was the question, or a doctor thinks they lack capacity. Then you, like creating any document, have to address that issue first. So if an individual is going to create a supportive decision-making agreement or a power of attorney, then they will need to have capacity to do that. It's just like entering into really any other type of agreement, a lease, a contract, that type of thing. So that's something that you would have to work with your doctor or care person who is determining that capacity. I believe that was the question. One I still see up there is the supportive decision-making agreement valid out of state? Nevada is one of only a handful of states that have a supportive decision-making law. And so in all likelihood, if you tried to take it out of state, it would really be up to the provider if they wanted to honor it. Not to say that they wouldn't honor it, but they may not be under any legal obligation to do so, depending upon what the laws of that state are. So it would really depend on where you're trying to take that document.
And an issue about that too is if you take your supportive decision-making agreement out of state, an in-state provider is the one that has protection from liability. So if you went to Utah and the Utah provider went ahead and honored the agreement, they may not necessarily have protection from liability in honoring your choice, and that's an issue. So I think this immunity from liability issue is very big, and it's a key feature of the Nevada law. Just because I wanted to comment about this situation about the doctor saying that a person may not have capacity, and I don't know how that was determined, but Nevada's got this physician certificate form, and the very last case that I did before I retired was a case where I was appointed to represent a person who was elderly, and somebody was trying to get guardianship over that person. And the doctor said that the individual was having some difficulties with decision making. And on 3 of the areas, the doctor said, well, the person can make decisions with help. So the doctor was testifying in court, and I said, well, if the person had help carrying out this choice, paying the rent, would the person need a guardian in that situation? And the doctor said no. And I said, well, if the person had somebody managing or being having access to their account so they could monitor the account, Do they need a guardian? And the doctor said no. So just because the doctor says the person lacks capacity, you got to look at the whole form, because they might say, oh, they don't need this. They don't need a guardian for this because they could do it with help. Well, if they can do it with help, they don't need a guardian. So you got to look at that kind of a form to see what the doctor's really looking at. And at the end of that case, there was just a limited guardian for a very specific item, and the full guardianship was turned down. So.
And it is important to note, again, I think we said this a couple of times, that every situation is so different. So if you have really specific questions, you really should talk to someone, an attorney, about your issue. I think the last question we have time for was, is a supporter the same as a personal representative? And the answer is no. So the supporter that an individual appoints helps them make decisions under supported decision-making agreements. You can have other people, such as an agent under your healthcare power of attorney or your financial power of attorney, who make decisions for you. You can also have someone you appoint to take care of your estate when you pass away, which is usually called your personal representative. So there's different names for all of these different situations and documents. You can have a guardian, personal representative, an agent, a supporter. It's not uncomplex. There's a lot of pieces and a lot of different options out there.
And just as a little bit of a concluding remark, I think the intent was that people could fill out a supportive decision-making agreement without having a lawyer. I think everybody hoped that it would be user-friendly, people could get together and do this kind of a document, stay out of the lawyer's office. But I've been doing this long enough that I know that once you start building on it, then you might want to talk to a lawyer, because if you're going to do a durable power of attorney to complement that supportive decision-making agreement, you want to make sure that it fits, that there's not contradictions between the documents. And so I just think at that point you might want to start talking with a lawyer in your town and go from there.
Which leads us to our final, or one of our final things, is where can you learn more about supportive decision making? Marcia. Great. So we'll have a website that is coming soon. We're hoping to have it up and running by today, but it didn't quite happen with all of the COVID interruptions. So we're going to have on there links for templates that you can use to make your own supportive decision-making agreement. We're going to have charts. We have the videos that you saw tonight, this video of the seminar, as well as some additional videos and information, national resources, local resources, links to the DD Council, links to the handouts you received in the email, links to the law, hopefully everything that we could compile for your information on using supported decision making. This is another, we just wanted to point out for you, in the meantime, supportivedecisionmaking.org is a really great resource. It has just a ton of information that has been gathered from around the country and what other states are doing, laws that are being passed now, things that are in the works. So it's really good information if you're looking for more immediately. The ACLU also has a great website. These are probably two of the best, supportivedecisionmaking.org and the ACLU website. The resources are just great. It does take a little bit of going through, but also just remember, if you're going to create your own, to make sure that it meets the Nevada requirements, as we pointed out. So there are some links on the ACLU and on the supportivedecisionmaking.org that have templates on them also.
And as a final note, there's some local information you can get. I believe the 2nd Judicial District Court in Washoe County, on their website, they have a lot of material on supportive decision making. It's a great way to learn more about supportive decision making. I believe at the Supreme Court, the Guardianship Compliance Office is developing some materials on supportive decision making. I looked for that. I couldn't find it, but I've been told that it's up or it's coming. So those are two local resources that you can use, and you can trust the information you're getting on them. A lot of that is a compilation of what's going on around the country also. So we appreciate your attention, and we hope you've learned something here tonight.
So we'll be sending out the link to the website, and then I just want to take a quick minute to say thank you to Marcia O'Malley for all of the wonderful videos and for the tech assistance, to Connor, Kaylin, and Mary, Easton and Justin and the Capozzi family, Tyler and his supporter Tony, Jack, Emily, Skylar, and Dr. David, and Ian and his supporter Randall, and Mod Pizza also for helping us with the wonderful videos. And then a big thank you so much to Diana Ravetti for all of her hard work in making this all come together. We couldn't have done it without her. So we hope that this has been helpful information, and stay safe and have a good night.